Question 1. The investigation demonstrates a traffic stop initiated due to observed erratic driving on a Manitoba highway. Upon approaching the vehicle, the officer notices the distinct odor of alcohol emanating from the driver's breath and observes the driver's speech to be slurred. The driver admits to having consumed a few drinks earlier in the evening. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the officer to ensure public safety and uphold Manitoba's traffic laws? Option A. Safely pull the vehicle over to the side of the road and request the driver to provide a breath sample for roadside screening. Option B. Engage in a prolonged conversation with the driver about their evening before addressing the signs of potential impairment. Option C. Immediately place the driver under arrest for impaired driving without further assessment. Option D. Allow the driver to proceed with a verbal warning while continuing to monitor their driving from a distance. Correct answer is A. Safely pull the vehicle over to the side of the road and request the driver to provide a breath sample for roadside screening. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a scenario where a driver's ability to operate a vehicle safely is in question due to potential impairment. This is professionally challenging because it requires immediate and decisive action to protect public safety while respecting individual rights. The driver's behavior, including erratic driving and the smell of alcohol, creates a reasonable suspicion of impairment, necessitating a response that aligns with Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act and the principles of responsible driving. The best approach involves immediately stopping the vehicle in a safe location and initiating a roadside investigation to assess the driver's condition. This is correct because Section 254 of the Criminal Code of Canada, which applies in Manitoba, allows for a peace officer to demand a breath sample if they have reasonable grounds to suspect a driver has consumed alcohol. Furthermore, the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act emphasizes the importance of safe driving and the responsibility of all road users to prevent impaired driving. This approach prioritizes public safety by addressing the potential impairment promptly and according to established legal procedures. An incorrect approach would be to allow the driver to continue their journey, perhaps with a warning, while observing them from a distance. This is professionally unacceptable because it fails to address the immediate and significant risk of impaired driving. It neglects the duty of care owed to other road users and contravenes the spirit and letter of impaired driving legislation. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately arrest the driver without conducting a preliminary roadside assessment. While arrest may eventually be necessary, the initial step should be to gather information to establish reasonable suspicion or probable grounds for further action, as mandated by law. Proceeding directly to arrest without this preliminary step could be legally challenged and may not be the most effective way to confirm impairment. A further incorrect approach would be to engage in a lengthy conversation with the driver about their activities without addressing the observable signs of potential impairment. This delays the necessary investigation and could allow the driver's condition to worsen or for them to cause an accident. The focus must be on the immediate safety concern. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes public safety, adheres strictly to legal mandates, such as the Criminal Code and the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, and follows established procedures for investigating potential impaired driving. This involves observing, assessing, and acting based on reasonable suspicion and probable grounds, ensuring that actions are both legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 2. Assessment of a traffic stop in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where a driver claims to have been driving for many years without a valid license or insurance, stating they are experienced and just need to get home. What is the most appropriate and legally compliant course of action for the officer? Option A. Advise the driver to obtain the necessary documents as soon as possible and allow them to continue driving to their destination. Option B. Permit the driver to proceed to their residence to retrieve their licensing and insurance documents, with the understanding they will return to the stop location. Option C. Acknowledge the driver's stated experience and issue a verbal warning to drive more carefully, allowing them to continue their journey. Option D. Immediately disallow the individual from operating the vehicle and issue citations for driving without a valid license and without mandatory liability insurance, as per the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba. The correct answer is D. Immediately disallow the individual from operating the vehicle and issue citations for driving without a valid license and without mandatory liability insurance, as per the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a potential conflict between a driver's perceived right to operate a vehicle and the legal requirements for licensing and roadworthiness. The driver's assertion of having driven for years without a valid license or insurance presents a direct contravention of Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act. A law enforcement officer must balance the need to enforce traffic laws, ensure public safety, and uphold the integrity of the licensing system with the practicalities of the situation. The officer's judgment is critical in determining the appropriate course of action, which must be grounded in legal statutes and departmental policy. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice is to immediately disallow the individual from operating the vehicle and proceed with issuing appropriate citations for driving without a valid license and without mandatory liability insurance, as stipulated by the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba. This approach is correct because it directly addresses the illegal activity, prioritizes public safety by removing an unlicensed and uninsured driver from the road, and upholds the regulatory framework designed to ensure all drivers are competent and insured. Failure to do so would undermine the entire licensing and insurance system. Incorrect approach is analysis. Allowing the individual to drive home to retrieve their documents, even with a promise to return, is professionally unacceptable. This approach fails to enforce the law at the point of infraction, creating a significant risk to public safety. The driver is currently operating a vehicle illegally, and there is no guarantee they will return with the required documentation or that the documents, if produced, would be valid. This action constitutes a dereliction of duty and a failure to uphold the Highway Traffic Act. Accepting the driver's word that they have driven for years and are experienced, and therefore allowing them to continue their journey with a warning, is also professionally unacceptable. Experience does not negate the legal requirement for a valid driver's license and insurance. This approach ignores the explicit provisions of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, which mandates licensing and insurance for all vehicle operators. It creates a dangerous precedent and exposes other road users to risk. Asking the driver to simply be more careful and letting them proceed without any enforcement action is the least acceptable approach. This completely disregards the legal framework and the officer's responsibility to enforce traffic laws. It implies that the officer is not empowered or willing to act on clear violation, thereby compromising public safety and the integrity of law enforcement. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance, public safety, and ethical conduct. This involves 1. Identifying the observed violation, driving without a license and insurance. 2. Recalling and applying the relevant statutes, the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba. 3. Assessing the immediate risks to public safety. 4. Taking decisive enforcement action that aligns with legal requirements and departmental policy. 5. Documenting the incident and actions taken thoroughly. Question 3. The audit findings indicate that a driver has pulled over to the side of a busy Manitoba highway, exhibiting signs of distress and claiming an urgent personal matter. Their vehicle is partially obstructing a lane of traffic. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action to ensure safety and compliance with Manitoba's traffic laws? Option A. Calmly instruct the driver to move their vehicle to a safe, off-road location before discussing their concerns, emphasizing the importance of not obstructing traffic. Option B. Immediately engage in a detailed conversation with the driver about their urgent personal matter to understand the situation fully. Option C. Advise the driver to continue to their destination as quickly as possible to resolve their personal issue. Option D. Offer immediate advice on potential mechanical issues with the vehicle while it remains partially in the traffic lane. The correct answer is A. Calmly instruct the driver to move their vehicle to a safe, off-road location before discussing their concerns, emphasizing the importance of not obstructing traffic. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a potential conflict between a driver's perceived need for immediate action and the established legal procedures for operating a vehicle. The driver's emotional state and urgency could lead to a bypass of critical safety protocols, potentially endangering themselves and others. Careful judgment is required to balance the driver's immediate concerns with the paramount importance of adhering to Manitoba's traffic laws and safe driving practices. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves calmly and clearly explaining to the driver that while their situation is understood, the the immediate priority is to ensure the vehicle is safely parked and off the roadway before any discussion or action can be taken. This approach is correct because it prioritizes public safety and compliance with Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that vehicles must not obstruct traffic or create hazards. It also aligns with the ethical responsibility to uphold the law and promote safe driving environments. By ensuring the vehicle is safely parked, the driver can then address their concerns without compromising road safety. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to immediately engage in a detailed discussion about the driver's concerns, while the vehicle is still in a potentially hazardous position on the roadway. This is professionally unacceptable because it directly violates the principle of maintaining road safety and could lead to an accident, contravening the spirit and letter of Manitoba's traffic regulations regarding safe vehicle operation and obstruction of traffic. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the driver's concerns outright and insist they proceed to their destination immediately, regardless of the vehicle's condition or location. This is professionally unacceptable as it fails to acknowledge the driver's distress and could exacerbate their situation, potentially leading to a breakdown in a more dangerous location. It also disregards the potential safety implications of operating a vehicle that may be experiencing issues. A further incorrect approach is to attempt to diagnose or offer advice on the vehicle's mechanical issue while still on the active roadway. This is professionally unacceptable as it diverts attention from the primary safety concern of safely moving the vehicle out of traffic. It also places the individual in a position of offering unqualified advice on a matter that could have serious safety consequences if mishandled, potentially leading to further mechanical failure or an accident. Professional reasoning. Professionals encountering such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety above all else. This involves 1. Assessing the immediate safety risk posed by the vehicle's current position. 2. Communicating clearly and calmly with the driver, emphasizing the need to move to a safe location first. 3. Explaining the relevant legal requirements or safety protocols that necessitate this action. 4. Once safety is secured, then addressing the driver's underlying concerns in a responsible and appropriate manner, which may involve advising them to seek professional mechanical assistance or contact emergency services if necessary. Question 4. Regulatory review indicates that a physician has assessed a patient who has a diagnosed medical condition that, in the physician's professional opinion, significantly impairs their ability to operate a motor vehicle safely. The patient insists they feel fine and are capable of driving. What is the most appropriate course of action for the physician in Manitoba? Option A. Discuss the situation with the driver and trust their self-assessment that they are capable of driving safely. Option B. Advise the driver to take a break from driving and inform them that they should not drive until they feel better without reporting to MPI. Option C. Immediately report the driver's medical condition to Manitoba Public Insurance (MPI) as required by law. Option D. Inform the driver that their condition may affect their driving and suggest they consider not driving, but refrain from reporting to MPI. Correct answer is C. Immediately report the driver's medical condition to Manitoba Public Insurance (MPI) as required by law. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it involves a potential conflict between a driver's perceived need to operate a vehicle and the legal requirements for medical fitness to drive in Manitoba. The driver's assertion of feeling fine directly contradicts the medical professional's assessment, creating a situation where the driver's personal judgment must be weighed against public safety and regulatory obligations. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance with Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act and to uphold the ethical responsibility of protecting other road users. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice is to immediately report the driver's condition to Manitoba Public Insurance (MPI) as required by law. This approach is correct because Section 100 of Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act mandates that physicians and other healthcare professionals report to MPI any person who, in their professional opinion, is suffering from a medical condition that makes it unsafe for them to drive. This reporting mechanism is the primary regulatory safeguard designed to prevent medically unfit individuals from operating vehicles, thereby protecting public safety. Ethically, healthcare professionals have a duty to both their patient and the wider community. Incorrect approaches analysis. Reporting the condition only to the driver without informing MPI fails to fulfill the legal obligation under the Highway Traffic Act. While informing the driver is a necessary step, it is insufficient on its own to address the regulatory requirement and the public safety concern. This approach prioritizes patient confidentiality over statutory reporting duties and public safety. Suggesting the driver take a break and then reevaluate without reporting to MPI is also a failure. This approach relies on the driver's subjective assessment of their fitness to drive, which has already been deemed unreliable by the medical professional. It bypasses the established regulatory process for medical fitness assessments and reporting, potentially allowing an unsafe driver to continue operating a vehicle. Ignoring the situation and assuming the driver will self-regulate is the most egregious failure. This approach completely disregards the professional's knowledge of the driver's condition and the legal requirements. It represents a dereliction of professional duty and a direct contravention of the Highway Traffic Act, exposing the public to significant risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes legal compliance and public safety. This involves understanding their statutory reporting obligations, assessing the severity of the medical condition in relation to driving safety, and taking immediate action to report to the relevant authority, MPI in Manitoba, when a condition poses a risk. If there is any doubt about a patient's fitness to drive, the default professional and legal action is to report to MPI. Question 5. Consider a scenario where you are driving in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and you are involved in a minor collision with another vehicle. You are in a hurry to get to an important appointment, and the damage to both vehicles appears to be very slight, with no apparent injuries. What is the most appropriate course of action according to Manitoba's traffic laws? Option A. Leave a note on the other vehicle with your contact information and then proceed to your appointment. Option B. Stop your vehicle at the scene of the collision, check for any injuries, and exchange your driver's license number, name, and address with the other driver. Option C. Call the police immediately to report the minor collision before stopping to assess the situation. Option D. Immediately drive away from the scene to avoid being late for your appointment, assuming the damage is minimal. The correct answer is B. Stop your vehicle at the scene of the collision, check for any injuries, and exchange your driver's license number, name, and address with the other driver. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driver to make an immediate decision under pressure, balancing personal urgency with the legal obligation to report an accident. The driver's emotional state and the potential for minor damage can cloud judgment, making it crucial to adhere to established procedures to avoid legal repercussions and ensure the safety of others. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves immediately stopping at the scene, assessing the situation for injuries, and then exchanging information with the other driver. This aligns with Section 95 of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, which mandates that a driver involved in an accident must remain at the scene, render assistance if needed, and provide their name, address, and vehicle registration number to any person sustaining loss or injury. This approach prioritizes legal compliance and the well-being of all parties involved. Incorrect approaches analysis. Failing to stop and leaving the scene, even if the damage appears minor, is a serious offense under Section 95 of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba. This constitutes a hit-and-run, which carries significant penalties. Only leaving a note without stopping to speak with the other driver is insufficient. While it shows some intent to take responsibility, it bypasses the legal requirement to exchange information directly and offer assistance, potentially leaving the other party with incomplete or unverified details. Contacting the police immediately without first stopping and assessing the situation is an overreaction for minor property damage. While reporting is sometimes necessary, the primary legal obligation is to stop and exchange information first, unless there are injuries or significant damage that warrants immediate police intervention. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate safety and legal compliance. This involves 1. Stop safely, 2. Assess for injuries, 3. Exchange required information as mandated by law, 4. Determine if further reporting e.g. to police is necessary based on the severity of the incident and legal requirements. Question 6. Upon reviewing the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, a driver approaches a rural intersection controlled by a stop sign. The intersecting highway is visible, and no vehicles are immediately apparent. However, the driver is running slightly late for an appointment and is considering their options. What is the legally and ethically required action for the driver in this situation? Option A. Slow down to a near stop but proceed through the intersection if no vehicles are immediately visible. Option B. Stop briefly at the stop sign and then proceed immediately, assuming it is safe. Option C. Proceed through the intersection without stopping, as no vehicles are immediately apparent. Option D. Stop completely at the stop sign and yield the right-of-way to any pedestrians and all traffic approaching from the intersecting highway before proceeding. Correct answer is D. Stop completely at the stop sign and yield the right-of-way to any pedestrians and all traffic approaching from the intersecting highway before proceeding. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driver to make an immediate decision under pressure, balancing their desire to proceed with the legal obligation to yield. The driver must accurately assess the situation, understand their responsibilities as a driver, and apply the rules of the road to ensure safety. Careful judgment is required to avoid a collision and potential legal repercussions. The best professional practice involves stopping completely at the stop sign and yielding the right-of-way to any pedestrians and all traffic approaching from the intersecting highway. This approach is correct because Section 35(1) of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba mandates that a driver facing a stop sign must stop their vehicle before entering the crosswalk on the near side of the intersection, or if there is no crosswalk, before entering the intersection. Furthermore, Section 35(2) clearly states that the driver must yield the right-of-way to traffic already in the intersection or approaching so closely as to constitute an immediate hazard. This includes pedestrians, who always have the right-of-way in crosswalks. An incorrect approach would be to slow down but not stop completely, assuming it is safe to proceed. This violates Section 35(1) of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba by failing to stop at the designated point. It also demonstrates a failure to properly assess the potential hazard, as vehicles or pedestrians could be approaching from the intersecting highway that were not immediately apparent. Another incorrect approach would be to stop, but then proceed immediately without adequately checking for pedestrians or oncoming traffic, believing that the brief stop fulfills the legal requirement. This fails to meet the spirit and intent of Section 35(2) of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, which requires yielding the right-of-way to any approaching traffic that poses an immediate hazard. The driver has a duty to ensure the intersection is clear before proceeding. A further incorrect approach would be to proceed through the intersection without stopping at all, assuming that the traffic on the intersecting highway is far enough away to be safe. This is a direct and serious violation of Section 35(1) and Section 35(2) of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba and demonstrates a complete disregard for traffic laws and the safety of others. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and legal compliance. This involves 1. Recognizing the presence of a traffic control device, stop sign, and understanding its implications. 2. Actively scanning for all potential hazards, including pedestrians and vehicles from all directions on the intersecting roadway. 3. Executing a complete stop as required by law. 4. Verifying that the intersection is clear and safe to enter before proceeding, yielding to any traffic or pedestrians that have the right-of-way. Question 7. When evaluating a situation where your vehicle begins to experience significant mechanical issues, such as a sudden loss of power, while driving on a provincial highway in Manitoba, what is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action to take? Option A. Abandon the vehicle immediately on the side of the road and walk away to find help. Option B. Attempt to flag down other drivers for assistance while still in a travel lane. Option C. Continue driving at a reduced speed to the nearest exit or service station, hoping to avoid a breakdown in a more inconvenient location. Option D. Immediately activate hazard lights, safely pull over to the shoulder or the furthest right lane possible, and then contact roadside assistance or emergency services. Correct answer is D. Immediately activate hazard lights, safely pull over to the shoulder or the furthest right lane possible, and then contact roadside assistance or emergency services. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance immediate personal needs with the legal obligations and safety responsibilities mandated by Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act. The driver's desire to avoid a ticket and the potential inconvenience of a breakdown must be weighed against the paramount duty to ensure the safety of themselves and other road users. Careful judgment is required to determine the most responsible course of action when faced with a vehicle malfunction. The best professional approach involves prioritizing safety and adherence to traffic laws. This means immediately taking all reasonable steps to move the vehicle out of the flow of traffic, activating hazard lights, and then contacting appropriate roadside assistance or emergency services. This approach directly aligns with the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act's provisions regarding disabled vehicles and the general duty of care owed by all drivers to prevent accidents and obstructions. It demonstrates responsible vehicle operation and a commitment to public safety. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to continue driving the vehicle to reach a destination, even if it means driving slowly or erratically. This action directly violates the spirit and letter of the Highway Traffic Act by creating a hazard and potentially causing an accident. It disregards the immediate safety risks posed to other drivers who may not anticipate a malfunctioning vehicle. Another incorrect approach would be to abandon the vehicle without taking any safety precautions, such as activating hazard lights or attempting to alert other drivers. This creates an unexpected and dangerous obstruction on the roadway, increasing the likelihood of a collision. It fails to meet the driver's responsibility to mitigate the hazard their disabled vehicle presents. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to prioritize avoiding a traffic ticket over ensuring safety. While avoiding citations is a common concern, it should never supersede the legal and ethical obligation to operate a vehicle safely and responsibly, especially when a mechanical issue arises. The potential consequences of a preventable accident far outweigh the inconvenience of a traffic stop. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety above all else. When faced with a vehicle malfunction, the immediate steps should be: 1. Assess the immediate safety of the location. 2. Take all possible actions to move the vehicle to a safe location off the roadway. 3. Activate hazard warning lights. 4. Contact appropriate assistance. This systematic approach ensures legal compliance and ethical responsibility. Question 8. The analysis reveals that while driving in a residential area of Winnipeg, Manitoba, you approach an intersection controlled by a yield sign. You see a vehicle approaching from your right, but it appears to be moving slowly. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure safety and compliance with Manitoba's traffic laws? Option A. Wait for the vehicle from your right to come to a complete stop before you proceed. Option B. Proceed through the intersection without significantly reducing speed, assuming the slow-moving vehicle will yield to you. Option C. Accelerate slightly to pass through the intersection quickly before the vehicle from your right reaches it. Option D. Slow down, observe the traffic from your right, and be prepared to stop if necessary to allow the approaching vehicle to pass before proceeding. Correct answer is D. Slow down, observe the traffic from your right, and be prepared to stop if necessary to allow the approaching vehicle to pass before proceeding. Explanation. The analysis reveals a common scenario faced by new drivers in Manitoba, navigating complex intersections with unfamiliar signage and traffic flow. This situation is professionally challenging because it requires not just rote memorization of rules, but also the ability to interpret and react to dynamic traffic conditions under pressure. The driver's judgment is critical in ensuring their safety and the safety of others. The correct approach involves a proactive and defensive driving strategy, prioritizing clear observation and adherence to established traffic control devices. This means slowing down sufficiently to observe all signs, including the yield sign, and understanding its implication for right-of-way. The driver must be prepared to stop if necessary to allow traffic on the intersecting road to pass. This aligns with the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, specifically sections pertaining to yielding the right-of-way at intersections and obeying traffic control signs. The ethical imperative is to prevent collisions and ensure the safe movement of all road users. An incorrect approach would be to assume the right-of-way based on the perceived speed of the oncoming vehicle. This fails to acknowledge the legal requirement to yield and the potential for misjudging the speed or intentions of other drivers. This directly violates the Highway Traffic Act's mandate to yield when faced with a yield sign, creating a significant risk of a collision. Another incorrect approach is to proceed without fully observing the intersection, perhaps due to haste or overconfidence. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential hazards present. It ignores the fundamental principle of safe driving, which is to be aware of your surroundings at all times, and contravenes the requirement to obey all traffic control devices. Finally, An incorrect approach would be to brake abruptly only when the other vehicle is very close. While this might avoid an immediate collision in some instances, it is a reactive measure that stems from a failure to properly assess the situation earlier. It creates a dangerous situation for the driver behind and indicates a failure to anticipate potential conflicts, which is a core tenet of defensive driving and a requirement under Manitoba's traffic laws. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that emphasizes observation, anticipation, and adherence to regulations. This involves approaching intersections with caution, actively scanning for all traffic control devices, assessing the presence and movement of other vehicles, and making decisions based on legal requirements and the principle of avoiding foreseeable risks. Question 9. Risk assessment procedures indicate that while driving on Pembina Highway in Winnipeg, you observe a pedestrian standing at the edge of the sidewalk, looking towards oncoming traffic but not yet stepping into the roadway. The pedestrian appears to be contemplating crossing. What is the most appropriate immediate action to take? Option A. Swerve into the adjacent lane to create more space without slowing down. Option B. Maintain your current speed and assume the pedestrian will wait for you to pass. Option C. Honk your horn to alert the pedestrian that you are approaching. Option D. Immediately reduce speed and prepare to stop, maintaining a clear view of the pedestrian. Correct answer is D. Immediately reduce speed and prepare to stop, maintaining a clear view of the pedestrian. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driver to make an immediate decision under pressure, balancing their personal need to reach their destination with the paramount duty to operate a vehicle safely and in compliance with Manitoba's traffic laws. The presence of a pedestrian, especially one who appears uncertain, introduces a significant element of risk that must be proactively managed. Failure to do so could result in a collision, injury, or fatality, and severe legal and ethical repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves immediately slowing down and preparing to stop, prioritizing the pedestrian's safety. This approach aligns directly with Section 40(1) of the Highway Traffic Act of Manitoba, which mandates that a driver must yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian crossing or attempting to cross a roadway. By slowing down and being prepared to stop, the driver demonstrates due care and attention, fulfilling their legal obligation to avoid a collision and their ethical responsibility to protect vulnerable road users. This proactive measure ensures that the driver can react appropriately to the pedestrian's actions, whether they decide to cross or not. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to maintain speed and assume the pedestrian will wait. This violates Section 40(1) of the Highway Traffic Act by failing to yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian who is attempting to cross. It demonstrates a lack of due care and attention, creating an unacceptable risk of collision. Ethically, it prioritizes the driver's convenience over the safety of another person. Another incorrect approach is to honk the horn aggressively to signal impatience. While the Highway Traffic Act does permit the use of a horn to signal intention, its use in this context is inappropriate and potentially escalates the situation. It does not address the core issue of yielding to a pedestrian and could startle the pedestrian, causing them to act unpredictably, thus increasing the risk of an accident. This approach fails to demonstrate the required caution and respect for a pedestrian's right-of-way. A further incorrect approach is to swerve sharply to avoid the pedestrian without first slowing down or stopping. This action, while seemingly aimed at avoiding a collision, is extremely dangerous. It could lead to the driver losing control of the vehicle, colliding with other vehicles, or leaving the roadway. Such a maneuver is a failure to operate the vehicle in a safe manner, as required by general safe driving principles, and could be considered reckless driving under the Highway Traffic Act, as it creates an undue hazard. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes safety and legal compliance. This involves a continuous assessment of the driving environment, anticipating potential hazards, and acting proactively to mitigate risks. In situations involving pedestrians, the driver's primary responsibility is to ensure their safety. This means always being prepared to stop and yielding the right-of-way, regardless of the pedestrian's apparent intent. The driver should always err on the side of caution, assuming the worst-case scenario, e.g., the pedestrian stepping out unexpectedly and taking immediate steps to prevent it. Question 10. Implementation of safe driving practices in Manitoba requires an understanding of distance traveled. If a driver travels for 15 minutes at a constant speed of 60 km/h and then for 20 minutes at a constant speed of 90 km/h, what is the total distance in kilometers the driver has traveled? Option A, 60 km. Option B, 30 km. Option C, 45 km. Option D, 75 km. The correct answer is C, 45 km. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the applicant to accurately calculate the total distance traveled based on varying speeds and time intervals, while also considering the implications of exceeding the posted speed limit in Manitoba. The applicant must demonstrate not only mathematical proficiency, but also an understanding of traffic laws and safe driving practices. The core challenge lies in applying the correct formula for distance and ensuring the calculation reflects the actual driving conditions described. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves calculating the distance for each segment of the journey separately and then summing these distances to determine the total distance traveled. This approach is correct because it accurately reflects the physics of motion, where distance is the product of speed and time, backslash, d equals s backslash times t backslash. By breaking down the journey into distinct time-speed intervals, the calculation accounts for the varying conditions, leading to a precise total distance. This aligns with the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act's implicit requirement for drivers to understand their vehicle's performance and the distances covered, which is fundamental to safe navigation and adherence to speed regulations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to average the speeds and multiply by the total time. This is flawed because it does not account for the fact that the vehicle was not traveling at the average speed for the entire duration. For example, if a driver travels 10 km at 50 km/h and then 10 km at 100 km/h, the average speed is 75 km/h. Multiplying this by the total time, 0. 1 hours plus 0, 2 hours equals 0, 3 hours would yield 22, 5 km, which is incorrect. The actual distance is 20 km. This method fails to adhere to the fundamental formula for distance and leads to inaccurate results. Another incorrect approach is to only consider the time spent at the higher speed and disregard the time spent at the lower speed when calculating the total distance. This is a significant regulatory failure, as it completely ignores a portion of the journey, leading to a drastically underestimated total distance. It demonstrates a lack of attention to detail and an inability to account for all variables in a driving scenario, which is contrary to the safe driving principles emphasized in Manitoba's driver education. A further incorrect approach is to simply add the speeds together and multiply by the total time. This is mathematically unsound and has no basis in the principles of calculating distance traveled. It represents a fundamental misunderstanding of how speed, time, and distance are related and would result in a nonsensical and dangerously inflated distance calculation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such problems by first identifying all the given variables, speeds, and their corresponding durations. They should then recall the fundamental physics formula for distance, backslash, d equals s backslash times t backslash. The problem should be broken down into segments, with the distance for each segment calculated individually using the formula. Finally, all segment distances should be summed to obtain the total distance. This systematic, formula-driven approach ensures accuracy and demonstrates a thorough understanding of the underlying principles, which is crucial for safe and responsible driving in Manitoba. Question 11. To address the challenge of an oncoming vehicle drifting into your lane on a two-lane road in Manitoba, what is the most responsible and legally compliant course of action? Option A. Honk your horn continuously and flash your headlights to alert the other driver. Option B. Swerve sharply into the adjacent lane or shoulder to avoid the oncoming vehicle. Option C. Immediately slow down or stop your vehicle to assess the situation and avoid a collision. Option D. Maintain your current speed and assume the other driver will correct their course. The correct answer is C. Immediately slow down or stop your vehicle to assess the situation and avoid a collision. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires the driver to make an immediate decision under pressure, balancing the need to avoid a collision with adherence to traffic laws and the safety of other road users. Misjudging the situation or reacting improperly could lead to an accident, traffic violation, or endangerment of others. The driver must consider their immediate surroundings, the actions of other vehicles, and the potential consequences of various maneuvers. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves prioritizing immediate safety and minimizing risk. This means slowing down or stopping if necessary to assess the situation fully and avoid a collision. In Manitoba, the Highway Traffic Act emphasizes the duty of care for all drivers to operate their vehicles safely and avoid collisions. By slowing down or stopping, the driver is actively taking steps to prevent an accident, which aligns with the fundamental principles of safe driving and the legal obligation to exercise reasonable care. This approach allows for clear assessment of the other vehicle's intentions and the safest course of action. Incorrect approach is analysis. Reacting by swerving sharply without fully assessing the situation is dangerous. This could lead to losing control of the vehicle, colliding with other objects or vehicles, or creating a new hazard. Such an action would likely violate the duty of care to operate a vehicle safely. Continuing at the same speed and assuming the other driver will correct their course is also a failure of professional judgment. It relies on an assumption that could be incorrect, potentially leading to a collision. The driver has a responsibility to take proactive steps to avoid danger, not to passively hope it resolves itself. Honking the horn excessively and flashing lights without slowing down or stopping might alert the other driver but does not actively mitigate the immediate risk of a collision. While communication is important, it should be coupled with defensive driving actions. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a defensive driving mindset. This involves anticipating potential hazards, maintaining a safe following distance, and being prepared to react to unexpected situations. When faced with a potential hazard, the decision-making process should prioritize slowing down or stopping to gain control and assess the situation before taking any evasive action. This allows for a more informed and safer response, minimizing the risk of accidents and violations. Question 12. Examination of the data shows that you are approaching an uncontrolled intersection in rural Manitoba. A vehicle on your left arrives at the intersection at approximately the same time as you. The driver of the other vehicle makes eye contact with you and then begins to slowly proceed into the intersection. What is the safest and most legally compliant action to take? Option A. Enter the intersection while maintaining eye contact, hoping for a mutual understanding of who will go first. Option B. Honk your horn to alert the other driver that you are also entering the intersection. Option C. Wait for the other vehicle to completely clear the intersection before proceeding. Option D. Proceed into the intersection cautiously, assuming the other driver is yielding to you. Correct answer is C. Wait for the other vehicle to completely clear the intersection before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge for new drivers in Manitoba, navigating a situation where their immediate understanding of traffic rules might conflict with the actions of other road users. The professional challenge lies in applying the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act and safe driving principles consistently, even when faced with ambiguity or potentially unsafe behavior from others. It requires a driver to prioritize their own safety and adherence to the law over reacting to or mimicking potentially incorrect actions. The correct approach involves a driver strictly adhering to the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act regarding right-of-way at an uncontrolled intersection. This means yielding to the vehicle already in the intersection or to the vehicle on the right if both arrive simultaneously. By waiting for the other vehicle to proceed, the driver demonstrates a commitment to safe and legal operation of their vehicle, preventing potential collisions and upholding the principles of defensive driving. This aligns with the fundamental requirement of all Manitoba drivers to understand and obey traffic control laws to ensure public safety. An incorrect approach would be to assume the other driver intends to yield and proceed into the intersection. This action disregards the established rules of right-of-way and creates a high risk of a collision. It fails to acknowledge the legal obligation to yield and relies on an assumption about another driver's intentions, which is a dangerous practice. Another incorrect approach would be to honk the horn aggressively to signal impatience or demand the other driver yield. While signaling intent is sometimes necessary, aggressive honking in this context is not a substitute for understanding and applying the right-of-way rules. It can escalate a situation and does not resolve the ambiguity of who has the right-of-way according to the law. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to proceed into the intersection while making eye contact with the other driver, hoping for a mutual understanding. While communication can be part of driving, relying solely on eye contact at an uncontrolled intersection without clear adherence to the right-of-way rules is insufficient and risky. The Manitoba Highway Traffic Act provides clear guidelines for these situations, and relying on informal cues is not a safe or legally sound practice. The professional decision-making process for a Manitoba driver in such a situation should involve 1. Identifying the traffic control situation, uncontrolled intersection. 2. Recalling the specific rules of right-of-way for uncontrolled intersections under the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. 3. Assessing the position and actions of other vehicles relative to these rules. 4. Prioritizing safety and legal compliance by yielding when required, regardless of the actions of other drivers. Question 13. Research into Manitoba's traffic regulations has equipped a new driver with knowledge of right-of-way rules. While approaching an uncontrolled intersection on a clear day, the new driver sees a vehicle approaching from their right, arriving at the intersection at approximately the same time. What is the safest and most legally compliant action for the new driver to take? Option A. Signal to the other driver to proceed first. Option B. Yield the right-of-way to the vehicle approaching from the right. Option C. Speed up to pass through the intersection before the other vehicle. Option D. Proceed into the intersection, assuming the other driver will yield. The correct answer is B. Yield the right-of-way to the vehicle approaching from the right. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge for a new driver in Manitoba by requiring them to navigate a situation where their understanding of traffic laws might be incomplete, specifically concerning the right-of-way at an uncontrolled intersection. The challenge lies in applying the learned rules of the road under pressure and in a dynamic environment where misinterpretation can lead to dangerous situations or violations. Careful judgment is required to prioritize safety and adherence to the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves yielding the right-of-way to the vehicle that arrives at the uncontrolled intersection first. This approach aligns directly with Section 80(1) of the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, which states that when two vehicles approach an intersection at approximately the same time, the driver on the left shall yield the right-of-way to the vehicle on the right. In this scenario, since both vehicles arrived at approximately the same time, the driver on the left, the new driver, must yield to the vehicle on the right. This rule is fundamental to preventing collisions and ensuring predictable traffic flow. Incorrect approaches analysis. Proceeding into the intersection without yielding to the vehicle on the right is a direct violation of Section 80(1) of the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. This action creates a high risk of a collision and demonstrates a failure to understand or apply a critical traffic law. Assuming the other driver will yield is also a dangerous and incorrect approach. Traffic laws are designed to assign responsibility, and relying on another driver to deviate from their legal obligation is unsafe and unprofessional. It also fails to comply with the established rules of the road. Attempting to signal to the other driver to proceed first, while seemingly courteous, can create confusion at an uncontrolled intersection. Without a clear understanding of who has the right-of-way, such signals can lead to misinterpretations and potential accidents, and do not absolve the driver of their responsibility to follow the established rules of the road. Professional reasoning. Professionals in any field, including driving, must prioritize safety and adherence to established regulations. When faced with ambiguity or a situation requiring the application of rules, the decision-making process should involve 1. Recalling and understanding the relevant regulations, in this case, the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act regarding right-of-way. 2. Assessing the immediate situation based on those regulations. 3. Acting in a manner that prioritizes safety and compliance, even if it means yielding or waiting. In driving, this translates to always knowing and applying the rules of the road, especially at intersections, to prevent accidents and ensure the safety of oneself and others. Question 14. Which approach would be most appropriate for a new resident of Manitoba who has a valid driver's license from another country and needs to drive to a job interview within a week? Option A. Drive the vehicle and plan to visit a Manitoba Public Insurance Licensing Office immediately after the interview to begin the licensing process. Option B. Obtain a Manitoba driver's license by completing the necessary knowledge and road tests as required by Manitoba Public Insurance before driving independently. Option C. Drive using the existing foreign driver's license, assuming that driving skills are transferable and that the interview is a one-time necessity. Option D. Ask a friend who holds a valid Manitoba driver's license to accompany them while driving, even though the new resident does not yet have a Manitoba license? The correct answer is B. Obtain a Manitoba driver's license by completing the necessary knowledge and road tests as required by Manitoba Public Insurance before driving independently. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for transportation with the legal and safety obligations of the Manitoba licensing system. A driver must demonstrate not only the physical ability to operate a vehicle, but also a thorough understanding of Manitoba's traffic laws and safe driving practices. The licensing process is designed to ensure public safety on the roads, and circumventing it, even with good intentions, undermines this objective. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the Manitoba Public Insurance (MPI) licensing requirements. This means completing the necessary steps, including passing the required knowledge and road tests, before operating a vehicle independently. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the Highway Traffic Act, Manitoba, and MPI's regulations, which mandate that individuals must hold a valid driver's license appropriate for the class of vehicle they are operating. This ensures that all drivers have met the minimum competency standards set by the province, thereby protecting all road users. An incorrect approach would be to assume that prior driving experience in another jurisdiction automatically qualifies one to drive in Manitoba without obtaining a Manitoba license. This fails to acknowledge that traffic laws, road conditions, and driving customs can vary significantly between jurisdictions. It also violates the Highway Traffic Act by operating a vehicle without a valid Manitoba license. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on a friend to supervise driving without being properly licensed themselves, or without the learner driver having obtained the appropriate learner's permit. This not only puts the learner driver in a legally precarious position, but also fails to provide the structured, supervised practice that is often a requirement for new drivers in Manitoba, and it potentially places the supervising friend in legal jeopardy. A further incorrect approach would be to drive a vehicle that is not registered or insured in Manitoba, even if the driver believes they are competent. This is a violation of both registration and insurance laws in Manitoba, separate from the licensing requirement, and poses significant legal and financial risks. The professional reasoning process for a new resident in Manitoba should involve immediately researching and understanding the requirements for obtaining a Manitoba driver's license. This includes identifying the specific steps for transferring an out-of-province license or obtaining a new one, and understanding any graduated licensing stages. Prioritizing compliance with provincial law ensures safety and avoids legal repercussions. Question 15. Benchmark analysis indicates that a new driver in Manitoba approaches a busy intersection. The pedestrian signal is currently displaying a solid "Don't Walk" symbol. Simultaneously, the traffic light for the driver's direction of travel is green. Several pedestrians are still in the crosswalk, having begun to cross when the signal was "Walk." What is the safest and most legally compliant course of action for the driver? Option A. Assume the pedestrians will hurry to clear the intersection and proceed cautiously through the green light. Option B. Proceed through the intersection immediately, as the traffic light is green and the pedestrian signal is "Don't Walk." Option C. Wait for the pedestrian signal to change to "Walk" before checking the traffic light and proceeding. Option D. Stop before the crosswalk and wait for all pedestrians to clear the intersection before proceeding, even though the traffic light is green. The correct answer is D. Stop before the crosswalk and wait for all pedestrians to clear the intersection before proceeding, even though the traffic light is green. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge for new drivers in Manitoba, navigating a complex intersection with multiple traffic control devices and other road users. Professional challenge lies in accurately interpreting the sequence of signals and right-of-way rules under pressure, ensuring safety for oneself and others. Misinterpretation can lead to collisions, traffic violations, and potential harm. Correct approach analysis. The best professional practice involves a systematic approach to intersection navigation. This means observing all traffic control devices, including the pedestrian signal, the traffic light, and any posted signs, in the order they are encountered. Prioritizing the pedestrian signal ensures the safety of vulnerable road users. Then, observing the traffic light for the correct phase, green, yellow, or red, and yielding to any pedestrians or vehicles already lawfully in the intersection before proceeding is crucial. This aligns with Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act, which mandates drivers to yield to pedestrians in crosswalks and obey all traffic control signals. Incorrect approach is analysis, proceeding immediately upon seeing a green light without checking the pedestrian signal or for pedestrians already in the intersection, is a failure to prioritize vulnerable road users and can violate the right-of-way of pedestrians, which is a serious offense under Manitoba law. Waiting for the pedestrian signal to turn to a walk symbol before checking the traffic light is inefficient and can lead to missed opportunities to proceed safely when the traffic light is green and no pedestrians are present. Pedestrian safety is paramount. The driver must also be aware of the traffic signal's status to avoid impeding traffic flow unnecessarily. Assuming the intersection is clear because the pedestrian signal is not flashing "Don't walk" is a dangerous assumption. The pedestrian signal indicates the status for pedestrians, but the traffic light dictates the driver's right-of-way. A flashing "Don't walk" or a solid "Don't walk" symbol does not automatically grant a driver the right to proceed if the traffic light is red or if there are still pedestrians in the intersection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a layered approach to intersection safety. First, always be aware of and prioritize the safety of pedestrians. Second, understand and obey all traffic control signals in the order of their relevance to your movement. Third, always scan the entire intersection for potential hazards before entering. This systematic process, grounded in the principles of defensive driving and adherence to Manitoba's traffic laws, minimizes risk and promotes safe passage. Question 16. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision at an uncontrolled intersection due to a driver's limited visibility. As you approach this intersection in Manitoba, what is the most prudent course of action to ensure safety? Option A. Proceed through the intersection at the posted speed limit, as you have the right-of-way at an uncontrolled intersection. Option B. Come to a complete stop at the intersection, regardless of whether you see any other vehicles. Option C. Honk your horn continuously as you approach the intersection to alert any unseen traffic. Option D. Slow down significantly and be prepared to stop if necessary to ensure you can see and react to any approaching traffic or pedestrians. The correct answer is D. Slow down significantly and be prepared to stop if necessary to ensure you can see and react to any approaching traffic or pedestrians. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision at an uncontrolled intersection due to a driver's limited visibility. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to proactively assess potential hazards and apply safe driving practices, even when no immediate danger is apparent. The driver must balance their right to proceed with the responsibility to ensure the safety of themselves and others. Careful judgment is required to interpret the situation and choose the most appropriate action. The best approach involves slowing down significantly and preparing to stop if necessary. This is correct because it directly addresses the identified risk of limited visibility at an uncontrolled intersection. Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act, specifically sections pertaining to right-of-way at intersections and general duties of drivers, mandates that drivers must exercise due care and attention to avoid collisions. By slowing down, the driver gains more time to observe for other vehicles or pedestrians, assess their speed and intentions, and react accordingly. This proactive measure aligns with the ethical obligation to prioritize safety and prevent accidents, even in situations where the right-of-way might technically belong to them. An incorrect approach would be to proceed at the normal speed limit, assuming the right-of-way. This is professionally unacceptable because it disregards the identified risk of limited visibility and the inherent dangers of uncontrolled intersections. It violates the duty of care required by Manitoba's Highway Traffic Act to observe and react to potential hazards, potentially leading to a collision. Another incorrect approach would be to stop completely at the intersection regardless of traffic. While seemingly cautious, this is not the best professional practice as it can impede traffic flow unnecessarily and may be perceived as unpredictable by other drivers, potentially creating a different hazard. Manitoba's regulations expect drivers to proceed when it is safe to do so, not to halt all progress without cause. A further incorrect approach would be to honk the horn to alert potential unseen traffic. While honking can be used in emergencies, its use in this scenario is not the primary or most effective safety measure. It does not directly mitigate the visibility issue or provide the driver with the necessary time to assess the situation, and could startle other road users. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a continuous cycle of observation, assessment, and action. Drivers should constantly scan their surroundings, identify potential hazards, like limited visibility, assess the level of risk based on factors like intersection type and speed, and then choose the safest course of action that complies with traffic laws and prioritizes the well-being of all road users. Question 17. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a collision at an uncontrolled intersection in rural Manitoba with overgrown shrubbery, significantly limiting visibility to the left and right. You are approaching this intersection. What is the most responsible course of action to ensure safety and comply with provincial regulations? Option A. Proceed through the intersection at the posted speed limit, making only a brief glance to the left and right. Option B. Slow down considerably, perform a thorough scan of all directions, and only proceed when it is absolutely clear that no other traffic is approaching or has the right-of-way. Option C. Assume that other drivers will see your vehicle and yield the right-of-way due to your approach. Option D. Continue through the intersection at a moderate speed while sounding your horn to alert any potential traffic. The correct answer is B. Slow down considerably, perform a thorough scan of all directions, and only proceed when it is absolutely clear that no other traffic is approaching or has the right-of-way. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a collision at an uncontrolled intersection with limited visibility due to overgrown shrubbery. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to proactively identify and mitigate a potential hazard that is not immediately obvious or signaled by traffic control devices. The driver must exercise sound judgment and prioritize safety over convenience or speed. The best approach involves slowing down significantly, scanning thoroughly in all directions, and proceeding with extreme caution only when it is absolutely clear that no other traffic is approaching or has the right-of-way. This aligns with the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, which mandates that drivers must exercise due care and attention and drive in a manner that does not endanger themselves or others. Specifically, Section 121 requires drivers to yield the right-of-way at intersections where there are no traffic control signals, and Section 122 emphasizes the need to ensure the intersection is clear before proceeding. This approach prioritizes the fundamental principle of defensive driving and adherence to traffic laws designed to prevent accidents. Proceeding at the normal speed limit and only glancing briefly to the left and right is professionally unacceptable. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due care and attention as required by the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. It ignores the increased risk presented by the limited visibility and the uncontrolled nature of the intersection, potentially violating Section 121 by not adequately ensuring the intersection is clear. Assuming other drivers will see you and yield the right-of-way is also professionally unacceptable. This is a dangerous assumption that disregards the shared responsibility of road safety and the potential for misjudgment or inattention by other road users. It fails to account for the possibility that other drivers may also have limited visibility or may not be aware of your presence, leading to a violation of the duty to ensure the intersection is clear before entering. Continuing through the intersection at a moderate speed while honking the horn to alert others is professionally unacceptable. While honking can be a warning, it does not replace the legal and ethical obligation to ensure the intersection is clear and safe to enter. This action prioritizes asserting one's presence over confirming safety, and it does not fulfill the requirement to yield the right-of-way if necessary, as mandated by the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic assessment of the environment, identification of potential hazards, and application of relevant traffic laws and defensive driving principles. Drivers should always err on the side of caution when visibility is compromised or when approaching uncontrolled intersections. This includes reducing speed, actively scanning for hazards, and being prepared to stop or yield to ensure the safety of all road users. Question 18. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision at the intersection of Pembina Highway and Markham Road during peak hours. As you approach this intersection in your vehicle, what is the most responsible course of action to ensure your safety and the safety of others on the road in Manitoba? Option A. Come to a complete stop before entering the intersection to ensure it is absolutely clear, even if traffic is building up behind you. Option B. Proceed through the intersection at the posted speed limit without significant concern, as the risk assessment indicates only a minor collision is likely. Option C. Accelerate through the intersection quickly to clear it before any potential hazards can materialize. Option D. Maintain a safe speed. Actively scan the intersection for all potential hazards including other vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians, and be prepared to adjust your speed or stop if necessary. The correct answer is D. Maintain a safe speed. Actively scan the intersection for all potential hazards including other vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians, and be prepared to adjust your speed or stop if necessary. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a minor collision occurring at the intersection of Pembina Highway and Markham Road during peak hours, with a low severity of injury. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance adherence to traffic laws with the dynamic and unpredictable nature of real-world driving. The driver must make a judgment call that prioritizes safety while also ensuring efficient traffic flow without causing undue disruption. The best approach involves anticipating potential hazards and adjusting driving behavior proactively. This means maintaining a safe following distance, being prepared to brake, and scanning the intersection for potential conflicts, such as vehicles turning left or pedestrians crossing. This approach is correct because it aligns with the fundamental principles of defensive driving, which are implicitly and explicitly encouraged by the Manitoba Driver's Handbook. The handbook emphasizes anticipating the actions of other road users and maintaining control of one's vehicle to avoid collisions. Specifically, it stresses the importance of observing and reacting to traffic signals, signs, and the behavior of other vehicles and pedestrians to ensure safe passage through intersections. An incorrect approach would be to assume that because the risk is rated as moderate and severity as low, one can proceed without heightened awareness. This could involve maintaining a speed that is too high for the conditions, not actively scanning for other vehicles or pedestrians, or being distracted by internal or external factors. Such behavior is professionally unacceptable, as it directly contravenes the principles of safe driving and the explicit guidance in the Manitoba Driver's Handbook, which mandates vigilance and preparedness at all times, especially in potentially hazardous situations like busy intersections. Another incorrect approach would be to come to a complete and unnecessary stop before entering the intersection, even when it is clear and safe to proceed. This action, while seemingly cautious, can create confusion for following drivers, potentially leading to rear-end collisions or disrupting the flow of traffic, which is also contrary to safe and efficient driving practices. The Manitoba Driver's Handbook encourages smooth and continuous movement when safe to do so. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to aggressively accelerate through the intersection to beat any potential hazards, assuming that speed will prevent an incident. This is highly dangerous and unprofessional. It ignores the possibility of sudden events and increases the risk of a collision, as well as the severity of any potential impact. This directly violates the core principles of safe driving and the emphasis on controlled and predictable maneuvers. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that involves continuous situational assessment, adherence to traffic laws, anticipation of others' actions, and a commitment to defensive driving techniques. This framework prioritizes safety and responsible operation of a vehicle above all else. Question 19. Quality control measures reveal that a driver operating their vehicle on Pembina Highway in Winnipeg, Manitoba, encounters a situation where a vehicle in the oncoming lane suddenly drifts into their lane, creating an immediate collision risk. The driver has approximately 2 seconds to react. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the driver to take? Option A. Slam on the brakes and stop the vehicle completely in the current lane. Option B. Immediately apply the brakes firmly and steer slightly to the right if space and safety permit while maintaining awareness of the surrounding traffic. Option C. Swerve sharply to the left to avoid the oncoming vehicle without attempting to brake. Option D. Maintain current speed and hope the oncoming vehicle corrects its course. The correct answer is B. Immediately apply the brakes firmly and steer slightly to the right if space and safety permit while maintaining awareness of the surrounding traffic. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires the driver to make an immediate decision under pressure, balancing the need to avoid a collision with the legal and safety requirements of operating a vehicle. The driver must quickly assess the situation, understand their responsibilities, and act in a manner that prioritizes safety while adhering to Manitoba's traffic laws. Misjudging the situation or acting impulsively could lead to an accident, injury, or a traffic violation. Correct approach analysis. The best professional approach involves the driver maintaining control of their vehicle, braking safely and effectively to avoid the collision, and then, if necessary, pulling over to a safe location to assess the situation and report any damage or injuries as required by Manitoba law. This approach prioritizes immediate safety by preventing a collision, which is the paramount concern. Following this, it ensures compliance with legal obligations, such as reporting accidents if they occur, and allows for a calm assessment of the situation. The Manitoba Highway Traffic Act mandates drivers to operate their vehicles with reasonable care and attention, and to avoid collisions. In the event of an accident, specific reporting procedures are outlined. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to swerve sharply to avoid the obstacle without first attempting to brake. This action could lead to a loss of control, potentially causing a more severe accident, such as rolling the vehicle or colliding with other traffic or roadside hazards. It demonstrates a failure to prioritize controlled braking and vehicle stability, which are fundamental to safe driving practices under the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act. Another incorrect approach is to continue driving at the current speed, assuming the obstacle will move or that the other vehicle will correct its course. This demonstrates a lack of proactive hazard perception and a failure to take immediate evasive action when a potential collision is imminent. It disregards the driver's responsibility to operate their vehicle defensively and to take all reasonable steps to avoid an accident, as expected under Manitoba's traffic regulations. A further incorrect approach is to stop abruptly in the middle of the lane without considering the traffic behind. While stopping might seem like a solution, an uncontrolled or poorly timed stop could cause a rear-end collision, shifting the responsibility and potentially creating a more dangerous situation than the initial hazard. This fails to consider the broader traffic flow and the safety of other road users, which is a key aspect of responsible driving in Manitoba. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes immediate safety, followed by adherence to legal requirements and responsible conduct. This involves a rapid assessment of the threat, considering available options, and selecting the action that minimizes risk to themselves and others. In driving scenarios, this often translates to controlled braking as the primary response to an imminent hazard, followed by steering adjustments if necessary and safe to do so. Post-incident, ensuring all legal and reporting obligations are met is crucial. Question 20. The risk matrix shows a moderate probability of a vehicle ahead in Manitoba suddenly braking due to a deer crossing the road, and a high-impact consequence if a collision occurs. You are approaching this situation at 100 km/h, and the vehicle ahead is 50 meters away. If your reaction time is 1.5 seconds, and your vehicle's braking distance at 100 km/h is approximately 60 meters. What is the minimum safe following distance you should maintain in this scenario to avoid a collision, assuming the vehicle ahead stops instantaneously? Option A, approximately 110 meters. Option B, approximately 90 meters. Option C, approximately 75 meters. Option D, approximately 60 meters. The correct answer is A, approximately 110 meters. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a driver to balance immediate safety concerns with the financial implications of a potential accident. The driver must make a rapid assessment of risk and decide on the most prudent course of action, considering both their own safety and the potential for damage to property. Careful judgment is required to avoid unnecessary risks, while also not being overly cautious to the point of impeding traffic flow or creating new hazards. The best professional approach involves prioritizing safety and adherence to traffic laws. This means slowing down significantly, increasing following distance, and being prepared to stop if necessary, even if it means a slight delay. This approach is correct because it directly aligns with the fundamental principles of safe driving as outlined in the Manitoba Highway Traffic Act, which mandates drivers operate their vehicles in a safe and responsible manner, paying attention to road conditions and other vehicles. Specifically, the Act emphasizes maintaining a safe following distance and exercising caution in adverse conditions. By reducing speed and increasing distance, the driver is proactively mitigating the risk of a collision, which is the primary ethical and legal obligation of any driver. An incorrect approach would be to maintain the current speed and assume the other vehicle will correct its path. This fails to acknowledge the inherent unpredictability of other drivers and the potential for sudden, unexpected actions. Ethically and legally, this demonstrates a disregard for the safety of oneself and others, violating the duty of care expected of all drivers under Manitoba law. Another incorrect approach would be to brake abruptly without checking mirrors or signaling. This action could cause a rear-end collision, creating a new and potentially more severe hazard, and is a clear violation of safe driving practices and traffic regulations regarding sudden braking and signaling. Finally, attempting to accelerate past the vehicle to avoid a potential conflict is also an incorrect and dangerous approach. This maneuver increases speed in a situation where caution is warranted, potentially leading to a loss of control or a collision if the other vehicle makes an unexpected move. It prioritizes expediency over safety and is contrary to the principles of defensive driving. Professionals should use a decision-making framework that begins with a rapid assessment of the immediate environment and potential hazards. This involves identifying the risk factors, e.g., proximity of other vehicles, road conditions, visibility. Next, they should consider the available options and evaluate each against the primary objective of ensuring safety and compliance with traffic laws. This framework prioritizes risk mitigation and adherence to regulations over personal convenience or assumptions about other road users' behavior.